Mm-hmm. Okay, good evening. I am live on Instagram. Renee's having some technical difficulties over there with Facebook, but we are going to get started because I'm happy you guys are joining us. Hey, Bia. Hey, Chastity. Hey, guys. Welcome, welcome. It's good to have you here with us. Tonight's live is going to be all about overcoming fear of the unknown, right? This is what we're trying to do here every single week. I want you to be able to dominate your emotions. What emotions are those? Usually, it's the one that's involved with the triangle of death: fear, stress, and anxiety. Those three really sort of mess us up. It kills, it steals, it destroys our joy, our happiness, and it affects our triangle of life. It affects our ability to balance out healthy relationships, our health, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, and yes, even our vocation, our passion, the thing that wakes us up and gets us out of bed in the morning. And so tonight, overcoming the fear of the unknown. This is something that's been coming up a lot with my clients. It's this idea of, because I am so afraid, I don't know what the next step is. Especially right now in this time that we're living in, it seems like there are so much things that are uncertain. I think the thing that we are most certain of is the fact that we don't know anything. It's almost like we're groping in the darkness, and whenever we feel like we have a little bit of certainty, it's only to find out that we were wrong all along. This is why right now, more than ever, one of our greatest physiological, psychological weaknesses is fear of the unknown. Now look, for those who are joining, take this time to share it with your family, with your friends. Share, so that we can get as much people as we can here tonight, because I am certain that you're not the only one trying to dominate your emotions. All of us are trying to dominate our emotions because we know the damages that stress, fear, and anxiety is causing us. In fact, something that is said over and over and over again in the Bible is, do not fear, do not fear. Jesus says that more than he says anything else. Could it be that fear is causing more damage to our bodies, to our minds, to our health than we actually are even aware of? So that's why overcoming the fear of the unknown is paramount to our health, to our relationships, and honestly, that we would be able to live out the destiny that God has in store for us. Now look, it's normal. It's normal that you would have some worry. In fact, fear and even anger and worry, these are all things that you would call physiological responses. I love that my twin boys, River and Reed, that they have a little bit of fear. They have physiological fear. They don't have pathological fear. That's when we start to get ourselves in a mess. But physiological fear is important, right? Earlier today, they were riding their ATVs, and they know when they're riding that they need to have both hands on the steering wheel at all times. They also know that when one of the brothers, when their brother is riding, they know that they're not going to stand in front of it. And usually when they see the ATV coming their way, they say, press the brake, press the brake. They know, they have fear that if that ATV goes over them, it's not going to be good news. They have physiological fear. That's the normal fear. That's our God-given fear. Now, the problem is when a normal worry or occasional negative thoughts, when they become pathological. Now we have a situation because now it paralyzes. And so a little uneasiness, a little nervousness, when you're going to go public speak, or you're going to go try out for that new position, or you're going to have an interview, or honestly, whether you're going to meet someone that you've been talking to online for the first time. These are normal, everyday situations, and a little uneasiness, a little anxiety, a little fear is fine. But we need to make sure that it doesn't become overwhelming, that we're not experiencing a tremendous amount, because if we do, again, it's going to affect our health, relationships, and our vocation, our passion, our mission. So during this week, I asked you guys a series of questions there's on the stories to sort of prep you guys for tonight. I wanted to know if you are experiencing fear of the unknown. And sometimes, there's a lot of people who say, absolutely, that's something I'm experiencing. And it seems that there are certain personality types that experience this more than ever. usually the OCD, the perfectionism, usually those personality types are experiencing. Others also, if you tend to be a more anxious person, maybe you were diagnosed with anxiety or depression, fear of the unknown could also be part of what you are experiencing in your day-to-day. But maybe you don't have any of those, and maybe you are too experiencing fear of the unknown. And so I asked you a series of questions to see if it resonated with you in any way. And based on the answers that you guys gave me, which was yes, 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 I was able to see, wow, this is something that a lot of us are going through, which is why this community is so important, because I want to make sure that you are getting real answers to your questions. So welcome, welcome those who are joining. Lindsay, hello. And so look, what are sort of the top 5 things that we gather together, that I've been gathering for my clients, and then I've been giving it to you guys to see if we're on the same page, is that fear of the unknown, that it increases our adrenaline, leading us to fight, flight, or freeze. We're going to see exactly what that does. We're going to break down these 4 points right now, and I want to give you remedies to these 4 points. The second thing is it encourages you to avoid new situations. The third thing, it makes you highly critical of yourself, of others, and it erodes your self-esteem. And finally, it floods your minds with ruminating thoughts that are on sort of, on replay over and over and over and over again. So if you've identified yourself in any one of these 4 things, stick around, because I'm about to give you remedies. It's going to be quick. I'm going to give it to you straight. No beating around the bush tonight. Now look, fear of the unknown is caused by 2 things. And this is what you're going to see, and this is what we're going to resolve. Lack of predictability and lack of control. So look, fear of the unknown is caused by lack of predictability and lack of control, which is why we experience what? Adrenaline leading to fight, flight, or freeze. It encourages us to avoid new situations. It erodes our self-image. It makes us highly critical of ourselves and of others. And yes, it floods your minds with ruminating thoughts. Now, before we start to break this down, I need you to understand that this lack of predictability, anytime you are going to take an action, you are also taking a risk. I mean, think about it. When you get married, you take a risk. When you have children, you take a risk. When you get a new job, you take a risk. When you buy a new house, you take a risk. There is nothing in life that you are going to do. There is no action that you are going to take where there is not risk involved. There will always be a risk. Okay? But what keeps us sane when we are making decisions in the face of uncertainty is 2 things: evidence and feedback. Evidence and feedback. Okay, we're going to break that down, so stay with me. I hope you have your papers and pens here tonight, because I want to make sure that you're writing these things down and you can quickly look back. In fact, we've even created a little carousel for you guys after tonight's live where you're going to be quickly able to have that at your disposal, so then you can just save it, and whenever you're facing fear of the unknown, you can just go there to your saved information there on Instagram, and you'll have it there accessible to you. Okay, and the second one is lack of control. Now, whenever you feel like you can't control circumstances, it causes us tremendous amount of anxiety. And so instead of feeling powerless, we start to focus on the things we can control, and instead of fear, we start to have courage. Okay, so this is sort of the foundation. This is the bedrock of what we're going to talk about, but now we're going to break it down. Remember those 4 things that I said you might be experiencing because you have fear of the unknown? Well, now I want to give you real solutions so that you can apply it today so your tomorrow looks different. Okay, so number 1, because you are afraid of the unknown, are you having an increase of adrenaline leading to fight, flight, or freeze responses? Now, several clients of mine have given me different responses. Some of them say, when I'm afraid, I fight. The other one says, when I'm afraid, I flee, right? Flight. Or when I'm afraid, I freeze. What is it for you? If you are so courageous here tonight to share with us, what do you do when you are afraid? Do you fight? Do you take flight? Or do you freeze? Which one is it for you? Let's see. Whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, send your answers in, and maybe, just maybe, you'll have someone else here in tonight's audience that has a similar experience, a similar reaction that you have. Is it fight, flight, or freeze? Okay, so as the answers are coming in, I'm going to define each one to see what you identify with. So the first thing is this. Look, when someone fights, when they're afraid, it's usually because anger is fear in disguise. Did you catch that? Anger is fear in disguise. That's why there's a verse in the Bible that says, better is he who can control himself. That's why we need to dominate our emotions. What emotions? Stress, fear, and anxiety. That's what we're doing here. We're helping you dominate your emotions. Why? Because the Bible says better is he who can dominate, who can control his emotions, than he who can rule a city. Why? Because if we cannot rule ourselves, if we cannot rule our emotions, surely and certainly we cannot wisely rule others. Okay? So the first one is fight. Now, I had a client of mine, and he said when he was afraid of the unknown, we were talking about this largely, him and I going back and forth, and I told him anger is fear in disguise, and he thought, for him it was a light bulb, it clicked. He goes, that makes so much sense. When he went to his job, he entered the workforce with someone about the same time. Maybe he was a couple of months in advance. Well, towards the end of this year, that person got a promotion and ended up taking the place that he wanted. And he just flipped. He reacted with fight. He became, verbally aggressive. And thank God I didn't get to physical aggression, but he became very verbally aggressive. Not only with his bosses, right, those in charge of giving him the promotion, he also then took it out on his teammate, who it wasn't their fault. Why? Because anger is fear in disguise. And his fear made him react with fight. What is it for you? What about flight? Flight is the response that usually means you're just going to walk away, in fact, run away from this situation. For another one of my clients, when they were going to work and they were feeling very overwhelmed, fear of the unknown, because they didn't know, they were very new to the job, there was already a culture established, they were feeling like they didn't fit in, right, because of fear of the unknown. It has a series and a list of things. So in this case right now, we're talking about how when we are afraid of the unknown, it can cause a response of either fight, flight, or freeze. And for this particular client of mine, he just decided, I'm not going to show up to work at all. He fled. He ran from that situation. Luckily, he ran and found help. He is now putting himself in a situation where he can dominate these emotions. Why? Because he stopped showing up to work. And what happens when we stop showing up to work? Well, he got fired. Okay? So fight is not a good response. Flight is not a good response. What about freeze? Freeze is when your body literally becomes unable to move, whether it's physically, whether it's internally, emotionally, it doesn't move. It stays still. And the problem with staying frozen, staying paralyzed, is that you can't make decisions. Like another client of mine. So we have three clients who are experiencing fear of the unknown. All three of them are experiencing an increase of adrenaline, and they're all reacting in three different ways. One fought, one fled, and this one froze. And how did he freeze? Well, he's in a job, he's in a situation that is awful, he doesn't like it, he's unhappy, he's unsatisfied, he complains every single day to his family, to his friends, honestly, anyone with years that would hear, he complains that he doesn't like this job. But guess what? Because he's afraid of what's going to happen if he quits, if he resigns, he is so paralyzed that he cannot make a decision, even though his current situation is so awful that death is preferable than life. So he is frozen. Now, what is the remedy? What is the remedy for that? So here is what happens when you and I experience an increase in adrenaline. This is what happens. When we experience fear, our amygdala, this is a little mechanism that we have in our brain. Your amygdala becomes activated. Your amygdala is the place where you experience fear, right? Fight, flight, or freeze. And your brain is trying to make decisions as quickly as possible to protect you. Our brain's goal to make decisions that will keep us safe. that it will run away from things that are perceived as danger. But the problem is sometimes our brain goes into fight mode or flight mode or freeze mode unnecessarily. Now, if you see a bear running towards you and you run away, that's probably the best decision. If you see a bear running towards you and you decide to fight the bear, that's probably the wrong decision. So unfortunately, right now, because we are not able to dominate our emotions, we are responding incorrectly to perceived dangers or perceived situations. We need to start dominating our emotions, or else we are going to respond wrongly in an erroneous way, and it's going to cause us more harm than good. Like my client simply one day stopped going to work because he was so overwhelmed, because he was so anxious. It doesn't work that way. We can't do that. Why? Because then he got fired. Okay? And so what do? When we are feeling overwhelmed, if adrenaline is flowing through my veins, if it's, putting my amygdala on alert, if my amygdala is firing, what do? Well, there's an amazing study that was done, and I can send you the link there. I'll put it on the commentaries, and you can see it for yourself later. But in his book, I think the name of the book was called God-Shaped Brain. So there's 3 books that he wrote. His name is Dr. Timothy Jennings, and he wrote a book called Could It Be That Simple? God-Shaped Brain, God-Shaped Heart. It's either in the brain one or the heart one, okay? And in this book, he writes a study about how when you and I spend time meditating on a God of love, that they saw changes, physical changes in our brain. Now here's the thing, and this is why it matters. Your beliefs, the things you believe in, it literally transforms your mind physically. And not only does it physically transform your mind, but it transforms you, it changes you. What you believe matters. I always like to say, you make choices and your choices make you. So your beliefs matter. So if you have negative beliefs or positive beliefs, you are going to have an action based on those beliefs. So now here's the thing. That the study revealed that when people meditated, spent time on thinking about a God of love, that their amygdala, remember, that's the place that fight, flight, freeze is. That's the place where we're ready to go. That's the place where anxiety is stored, where fear is stored. Well, they saw that the amygdala, it literally decreased in size. Isn't that amazing? So that's the remedy. When you are experiencing adrenaline, when you are experiencing overwhelming anxiety, when you are experiencing fear of the unknown, and you're in this position, whether you're fight, whether you're flight, or whether you are freeze, that is the moment to meditate, to spend time on what? Love, a God of love. Spend time putting good things in your brain, helpful things, nutritious things in your brain. Why? Because perfect love cast out fear. The Bible says it, but then science proves it. How does science prove it? Well, they saw it. They put machines. They set someone's brain up, and they gave someone, hey, I want you to meditate on these words. And it was all negative words. And I want you to meditate on all these positive words. And they literally saw a change, a shift, the amygdala decreasing in size. Okay? Very good. For those who are coming in, welcome, welcome, welcome. It's good to have you. We just talked about step number 1, but now we are on number 2. What are we trying to figure out here today? I want you to overcome your fear of the unknown, because your fear of the unknown is causing stress, fear, and anxiety, and it's inhibiting you from experiencing quality relationships, health in your body, in your mind, in your soul, and ultimately, it's inhibiting you from living out your destiny, your purpose, your mission, okay? From excelling professionally in your life. So number 2, those who experiencing fear of the unknown, at times you are going to avoid situations. Fear of the unknown encourages you to avoid situations. Now look, I was reading this incredible little article earlier today, and look at what this woman, Carol Dweck and Heidi Grant and other researchers, they said this. One of the reasons fear, stress, and anxiety that many of us feel in unfamiliar contexts is the mindset we bring. So look at what they're saying. They're saying at times you and I feel stress, fear, and anxiety because when we enter new environments, new situations, or new experiences, we enter it with the wrong mindset. What is the remedy? If I have fear of the unknown, Amanda, the first thing you told me is that there is adrenaline shooting through my body and it's making me react with fight, flight, or freeze. And typically, because I have not dominated my emotion, it's going to cause me to respond incorrectly to what is a perceived danger, even though it's not dangerous. Now you're telling me that if I am experiencing fear of the unknown, it is encouraging me to avoid new situations. And new situations is the very thing that is going to help us grow, that's going to help us meet new people, get new ideas. So now, what these researchers saw is that how we enter into new situations, whether we're going to be successful in them or unsuccessful, depends on the mindset that we go into this situation. So look at what they said. They said that mindset has a huge impact, not only how we anticipate and experiencing situations. Look how important that is, how you anticipate it. Because before you even walk into a new situation or a new experience, your mind is already either sabotaging you or helping you. If you enter into a situation where you're already sabotaging yourself, thinking, wow, this is going to be awful, this is going to suck, no one's going to like me there, I'm so awful with meeting new people, they're going to make fun of me, you are going to enter it in with a certain mindset, and it's going to sabotage you. So these researchers are saying that not only is the wrong mindset going to impact the way you anticipate and experience the new situations, but also in what you say and do, and unfortunately what you don't say and what you don't do. So mindset matters. Well, Amanda, if my fear of the unknown is encouraging me not to try, not to enter new situations, what do I need to do? You need to change your mindset from this mindset to the other mindset. So the mindset that is the problem is the performance-oriented mindset. Write this down. If you are entering new situations with a performance-oriented mindset, you are setting yourself up for failure. And what is this mindset? Well, this mindset comes to see and approach and anticipate new situations as a make it or break it, as a trial, as though you are entering it where you're going to be judged and people are going to look at your talents and your abilities and your skills. And if you don't perform, right, the performance-oriented mindset, then you are going to be a fraud, you are going to be a failure, you are not going to have success. Instead of approaching new situations as opportunities to learn and to observe and to meet new people, you go in with this limiting belief that you're somehow being tested, right? That you're being thrown almost into the lion's den and all eyes are on you. If you enter new situations with a performance-oriented mindset, you are going to set up yourself for failure. Fear of the unknown encourages you to not enter new situations. But I'm telling you that you must enter into new situations, but you need to make sure you have the right mindset. And it's not a performance-oriented mindset. It's a what? You need to go into new situations with a learning-oriented mindset. Why? When you go in with this mindset, with a mindset that you want to learn, you start to see new situations and you start seeing new situations as challenges. You start to have a desire for it. You start to look at it as an opportunity for growth. Now, I'm gonna share something with you, and you're probably gonna be like, oh, come on, Amanda, no way. Let me tell you something. It seems to you, maybe watching me online, that I'm very extroverted. And you're right, I would consider myself more extroverted than introverted. But I will tell you, I will share with you that there are different sort of scenarios when that happens. So for example, if I have to go to a church and I have to preach, okay, if I'm going to a church, a large church, and I'm preaching to a bunch of people, I'm not really embarrassed by that. You know, I'm not afraid of that. That's fine. So I'll go to the church. But it hasn't always been that case. When I started preaching, when I started public speaking, I was very much afraid, fear of the unknown. And it was very hard for me to enter into this new, I don't know, and you think the worst case scenario, right? What if I forget the sermon? What if I stall? What if while I'm climbing up the stairs with my high heels, what if I fall on the floor, right? We have all these crazy things that go into our mind. But what happens? The more and more I adopted not a, performance mindset, but a learning oriented. Every time I got on the stage, I thought this is an opportunity for me to hone in my skills. This is an opportunity for me to what? For me to learn, for me to practice, for me to share stories, for me to help people. I went in with this mindset. When you go in with this mindset, when you focus on learning and not competing, you go in a performance mindset, you're going to be comparing yourself with other speakers. And let me tell you, when even now, right, I still have so much to learn. There's so much better speakers out there than I am. But here's the thing. If I'm going in with a learner mindset, with how can I grow out of this? I'm not competing with anyone else. I'm trying to figure out how I can be the best version of me. The next one, those who go in with a learning-oriented mindset, they don't take failure personally. They take failure as part of the process. And every time they fail, they see those mistakes as feedback that they can take in, and then they can write plans, take notes, and see what can I do better? How can I adjust to become better next time? If learning is your main goal, you are more likely to recognize and take advantage of the surprises, the unexpected connections, and the new opportunities that you are going to engage in. Now, sometimes it's scary, okay? The first time I meet a client, or the first time I have to go and talk to a corporation, and yeah, it's a little scary. Sometimes there are people that are much older than me, way more experienced than I am. There is fear of the unknown. There will always be a little fear. But this fear can't put you in fight, flight, or freeze. Neither can this fear prevent you from experiencing or putting yourself in new situations. Because it's in these new situations, in these new environments, that again, you're going to have opportunities, you're going to meet new people, you're going to make connections, and we need all these things to not only live, but to thrive. And finally, here's one of my favorite things. If you enter into a new situation with a learning-oriented mindset, you are going to make a great first impression. Why? Because again, you're approaching all of these people with curiosity. You're approaching them not thinking that you're the smartest person in the room, not trying to outperform anyone. Remember, the person entering the room with a performer-oriented mindset, they're trying to prove something to someone. They're trying to be the smartest person in the room. But a learner-oriented mindset comes into the room saying, I want to be the dumbest person in this room because I want to learn, and I want to be curious, and I want to ask questions. And when you are actually listening and actually asking questions to people and making them feel important, guess what? Obviously, these are character traits that are more admirable to people than, again, if you're trying to be the smartest one in the room. Okay, does that make sense? So look, we got 2 more to go. So number 1, fear of the unknown can be increasing adrenaline and leading you to fight, flight, or freeze. And what is the remedy of that? The remedy of that is meditating on a God of love. Why? Because research showed that when you spend time thinking about positive things and not negative things, about good things, honorable things, lovely things, joyful things, when you spend time on that, it literally decreases the size of your amygdala. Hallelujah. Number 2, if you're experiencing fear of the unknown, well, it's encouraging you to avoid new situations. But new situations is the very thing that you need to make connections and to have opportunities and to meet new people. So is a little fear part of it? Sure. Are you going to have a little anxiety? Absolutely. Do I still get butterflies in my stomach when I have to go do a big talk? Of course I do. But here's the thing, we need to dominate our emotions, and we need to use anxiety as fuel, not as something that's going to sabotage us. So what's the remedy for that? Go into these situations not with a performance-oriented mindset, but with a learning-oriented mindset. Okay, here's number 3. Welcome those who are joining us. It's good to have you here. Number 3, for fear of the unknown. How can we overcome fear of the unknown? Number 3 is when you are afraid, it makes you highly critical of yourself, of others, and it erodes your self-esteem. This is a simple one. What is the remedy for being highly critical of myself and of others? Well, you need to replace self-criticism with self-compassion. Self-criticism to self-compassion. The Dalai Lama says it like this: if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. And if you want to be happy, practice compassion. Compassion towards others, compassion towards ourselves. forgiveness towards others, forgiveness towards ourselves. And so, literally, put yourself up in a mirror. We have so many negative thoughts on replay. And honestly, remember that I told you that the positive beliefs literally decrease the size of your amygdala? Well, guess what? Positive beliefs will also help you stop being so highly critical of yourself and of others, and it's going to stop eroding your self-esteem. So I'm going to give you some ideas. Saying things like this: I deserve to be loved. I am worthy. I am honorable. I am loved. I am healthy. I'm intelligent. I'm significant. I deserve to live and to be happy. Man, I love some of these things. Look at this. I did the best I could. I learned from that. I learned from my mistake. Look at that. Do you hear the difference? This is not a performance-oriented mindset. This is a learning-oriented mindset. Look at this. I can trust my judgment. I am in control. I have choices. I am strong. I can succeed. I can handle this. I am capable. I am resilient. So instead of self-criticism, give yourself some self-compassion. The remedy is being compassionate with yourself, forgiving yourself, being compassionate with others, forgiving others, and watch your self-esteem increase. Okay? Here's the fourth and final one. Fear of the unknown floods our minds with ruminating thoughts. Floods our minds with ruminating thoughts. What are ruminating thoughts? Well, have you ever had, whether it's a thought or a word or a string of thoughts that just keeps repeating and repeating and repeating over and over and over and over again? I know for a lot of my clients who are sort of struggling and suffering with this fear of the unknown, for one of them, it's that I just can't get these thoughts out of my head. I can't keep these thoughts out of my head. Well, now here's Gandhi. He says it like this. He says that the best way to find ourselves is to lose ourselves in the service of others. If we have a thought in our head that keeps replaying over and over and over again, when I use the word distract, I don't want you to understand that now we're going to bury things under the carpet. We can't do that, okay? So we can't put things under the carpet. We have to grab a vacuum and we actually have to start cleaning and rolling up our sleeves and doing the hard work of making sure that there is no dust and debris, that it's fully cleaned. That being said, there are positive ways that we can distract. Maybe there's a better word from distract, but when Gandhi says the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others, I'll give you an example. There was a story that I heard such a long time ago, and there was this woman, and she was really trying to get contact. There's a psychologist in her town, a very well-known psychologist, and she was desperately trying to just find time to speak with this man. She was feeling sad and depressed, and she had all of these ruminating thoughts about not being good enough and not being valuable and not being worthy. Her self-esteem was eroding. Her self-image was eroding. She couldn't forgive herself. She felt so much guilt and shame. And she called the psychologist several times, and he says, listen, ma'am, I am so incredibly busy. But he felt so bad because this woman was in dire need, but his schedule was so full, he didn't know what to do. And so he asked her a question. He goes, what do you like to do? And this woman's like, what? She was so sad. She was so miserable. She's, at that point, she's like, I don't like to do anything. He's like, no, think. What do you like to do? And she goes, I like to make bread, right? And he's like, okay, so this is what I want you to do until I'm able to see you. And he wasn't going to be able to see her till like another month. And she goes, I'm going to have to wait a whole month to be able to see you. He goes, I'm extremely busy. He goes, but I want you to do something. For the next month, I want you to make bread, and I want you to give out your bread to anyone you see. Knock on people's door and hand them bread. See people on the street and hand them bread. The sadder they are, the more bread you give them. And she goes, really? That's what you want me to do? He said, yes. And within a month, I'm going to call you back. Just make bread and give people bread. And sure enough, reluctantly, not really wanting to do it, she starts to make bread. So she makes bread and she gives it to the first house, the second house, to friends, to families, to strangers, to the homeless. She gives bread to as many people as she could possibly give bread to. When the psychologist calls her over, hey, I'm ready, she goes, no, I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm just going to keep giving bread. What's the idea? What's the point behind the story? There are times when our mind is flooded by ruminating thoughts. And it's not that we distract or we forget, but it's that when we start to lose ourselves in the service of others, well, guess what happens? we start to find ourselves. The best way to find yourself is to make yourself useful, to find then your purpose and your mission. And so that's the remedy. If you are ruminating, if your mind doesn't stop, find a way to be helpful to someone else, and you're going to see that the person who's mostly benefit, well, the Bible says it. Blessed is he who gives than he who receives. All right, very good. So look, we went through all 4, okay? And now I want to show you in a very practical way, and I'm going to do it very quickly. And I want to show you in the life and in the story of it. Maybe it's a familiar character of the Bible to you. I love to use examples of the Bibles because it makes so much sense, and also examples with some of the clients and some of the people that I'm working with who have had success in dominating their emotions, right? That's what we're here to do. We're here to dominate our emotions, fear, stress, and anxiety, so that we can live out success. What is success? Well, being able to balance relationship, our health, and our profession, our vocation, our mission. Okay, so Joseph. Now, I'm going to point out the 4 things, okay? Because Joseph, if there was someone in the Bible who experienced the fear of the unknown, it was Joseph. But I want to show you how. I just told you the 4 things that fear of the unknown is causing in you. And I just told you the 4 remedies. And I'm going to show you now how Joseph applied all of these 4 remedies and how he was able to dominate his emotions and have success in the triangle of life. Okay, so here we go. So remember, number 1, it increases adrenaline, leading to fight, flight, or freeze responses. And I told you that the remedy for that was to meditate on a God of love. So if you remember, Joseph was the one who his brothers, out of just jealousy and anger and hatred that he was dad's favorite boy, when Joseph went out there to check on his brothers decided that they were going to throw him into the ditch. Well, after throwing him into the ditch, they decided that they were going to sell him butt naked to the Ishmaelites. They took off his beautiful colored robe and they sold baby brother off to be a slave. Now, for a time, Joseph gave himself over to uncontrollable grief and terror. Can you imagine the fear of the unknown? He went from the coddled favorite boy in his father's household to now he's sitting butt naked in a caravan, going to a place that he does not know, to a people he does not know, to a language that he does not speak. And what would be the worst thing ever? To be a slave. Are you kidding me? And so here he is now on his way to be a slave. If someone is experiencing the fear of the unknown, it is Joseph. However, what happens? Is he going to fight? He's going to fight who? How is he going to be able to fight? He's going to what? Fight the Ishmaelites? He couldn't fight his brothers. They outnumbered him. What is he going to fight? Where is he going to run to? There's no way to run. The only response that he could have had was that he could have freezed. He could have literally paralyzed, he could have shut down, and he could have just gone with emotions, right? He could have given himself up to uncontrollable grief and terror. However, look at the remedy. His thoughts turned to his father's God. In his childhood, Joseph learned to love and fear God. And in that moment where adrenaline is coming into his body, where he can either fight, flight, or freeze, he turns over. He begins to meditate on the lessons that he learned as a young boy. These lessons came vividly to his mind, and Joseph believed. He decided to believe that the God of his father was now going to be his God. And in that moment, he gave himself fully to those thoughts. He meditated on a God of love, and he prayed and asked and purposed in his heart and said, God, please, would you be with me in the land of exile? Would you be my friend? Would you be the person that I could count on? Boom, look at what it is. Instead of leading to fight, flight, or freeze, Joseph literally applied the remedy of meditate on a God of love. And by doing so, look at this, by doing so, he committed himself to honoring God, and he did. His life was completely different after he made that decision to not meditate on circumstances or situations that were beyond his control, but his mind rised above the caravan that was driving him towards slave. His mind went to the God of his father. Now look at number 2. Remember, the fear of the unknown encourages us to avoid new situations. But we cannot avoid new situations because it's the very thing that's going to make us grow. Even difficult situations, those are the things that make us grow. So now look, Joseph, he did not go into Egypt with a performance-oriented mindset. I have something to prove. All eyes are on me. No. He went in with a learning-oriented mindset. How do we know? He was a slave who then became a prisoner, who then became the second in command to Pharaoh. There was no one higher in authority and rank in terms of Joseph. Hold on, let me say that again. Look, there was no one who ranked higher than Joseph except for Pharaoh. Okay, no one but Pharaoh. He was high in command. So now look at what happens. Because Joseph went into this circumstance, this situation, this environment with a learning-oriented mindset, his soul thrilled with excitement and with resolve to prove himself. Like a performance proving? No. To prove himself a learner. The sexiest thing in the world are people who are teachable, are people who are willing to learn. And so what happened under all of these circumstances, under all the environments, under all the situations, Joseph became a learner. He decided to serve God with an undivided heart. He met all of his trials, the good stuff and the bad stuff, with such fortitude of character. And he performed every duty with fidelity. He decided, he determined. And so look at what happens. In these different experiences that Joseph had, because he went in with a learner-oriented mindset, he made connections. He fortified his character. He learned new things, which is why finally when Joseph became second only to Pharaoh, it was so necessary that he had to go through these experiences as a slave, as a prisoner, because now he had understood, he had met, he could empathize with every layer of society, which is why it made him such a great ruler. Why? Because in every situation, in every trial, in every circumstance, instead of avoiding the situations, he entered into the situations with what? With a learning-oriented mindset. Number 3, fear of the unknown makes us highly critical of ourselves, of others, and it erodes our self-esteem. And what is the remedy of that? The remedy is to replace self-criticism with self-compassion. In Joseph's case in particular, for him, he could have been highly critical of others, especially the others who hurt him. So not only did his brothers sell him into slavery, but then you had Potiphar's wife who lied about him abusing her, and ultimately he ended up in prison. But guess what? Joseph understood the power of compassion towards others. And when his brothers come, after years and years and years, he's disguised because his brothers no longer recognized him as that little boy who they sold into slavery. Joseph is now a man, not only any ordinary man, but he is now the second in command to all of Egypt. He's dressed differently, he speaks differently, he looks differently, and when his brothers come, and later his brothers find out that it's actually Joseph, and they're so afraid. And Joseph looks at them and says, "Oh boys, what you meant for evil, God used for good." He forgave his brother. He had compassion towards his brother. Not only that, but he also never again brings up Potiphar's wife. You know, the woman whose fault it was that he ended up in prison? He never even brings up her name again. You know why? Because when we forgive something, truly, we almost at times forget. She no longer mattered in his life. I'm sure he remembered the things that she did, but it no longer mattered in terms of forgiveness. She was forgiven. And so the last one for Joseph, and then I'm going to wrap it up, is that Joseph, the fear of the unknown, our mind, remember, floods with ruminating thoughts. And I told you that the remedy for that was the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Gandhi. When Joseph was in prison, oh man, could his mind ruminate. Think about it. He was an innocent man having to go to prison because Potiphar's wife was a liar. And he sat there and he could have ruminated and ruminated and ruminated and thought, this is not fair. He could have moaned and complained and groaned. but he didn't. Look at this. When he entered into prison, those jailers, those people in charge, they were so mean to him. They treated him so badly. You know, they had chained him on his arms and on his legs and around his neck. But even in this moment, the character of Joseph was revealed. And he was faithful and he was patient. And now look at this. I'm going to read you a quote that I absolutely love. It says this. He did not brood upon his own wrongs, meaning he did not allow his mind to ruminate. What's the remedy for your mind ruminating? Serve others. Lose yourself in the service of others. That's exactly what he did. Look, he forgot his sorrow in trying to lighten the sorrows of others. He found a work to do even in the prison. Look at this. He was in prison. He was suffering. He was upset. He was in sorrow. But guess what? He was constantly trying to find work to do in the prison. He was constantly trying to lighten other people's burdens. In fact, when the cupbearer went in there, and when the two guys go in there, Joseph is not worried about himself. He's saying, hey, why do you guys look so sad? What can I do for you? How can I serve you? How can I help you? And what happens? All of those ruminating thoughts that could have existed in Joseph's mind, he didn't have time for ruminating thoughts. You know why? Because he was seeking the best way to help and to serve others. Look at this. He found a work to do even in prison. God was preparing him in the school of affliction for greater usefulness. Even these experiences, these hard experiences, proved to be a blessing in the life of Joseph. And when he was a slave and when he was a prisoner, guess what? He learned lessons of justice, of sympathy, of mercy that prepared him to exercise power with wisdom and compassion. Joseph was the kind of guy, who was willing to enter any situation. Why? He didn't have fear of the unknown. You know why? Because he went in as a learner, not as a performer. And what happens? Joseph gradually gains the confidence of all of those jailers. He was fully entrusted to then become in charge of all of the prisoners because instead of focusing on himself, instead of allowing his mind to ruminate, he focused on others. So now look, we're about to land this plane. If you have followed us, if you have stayed with us this far, you did it. We're going to close. And this is how we're going to close. Remember, I told you, I'm going to backtrack. And then I'm going to finalize with this. Look, you and I, we need to overcome the fear of the unknown because it's harming us. It's damaging us. And it's having a tremendous effect on our health, on our relationships, and our vocation. Why? Because fear of the unknown increases our adrenaline, leading us to fight, flight, and freeze. It encourages you to avoid new situations, which is the very thing that is going to give you connections and growth and curiosity and opportunities. It makes you highly critical of yourself, of others, and it is eroding your self-esteem. And finally, it's flooding your mind with ruminating thoughts. Now, I just gave you all the remedies for all of these things. I shared with you examples of my clients, and I shared with you the success of Joseph, who was able to apply all of these remedies that I just told you and have success in his life. He was able to start off as a slave to a prisoner to becoming the second person in command in all of Egypt. It's absolutely incredible. It's amazing. Why? Joseph dominated his emotions, and then he had success in life, quality relationships, health, and he was living out his purpose, his mission, and passion. Now, in the beginning, I told you that what causes fear of the unknown is two things. What causes fear of the unknown? Number one, lack of predictability, and number two, lack of control. So now I want to tell you, well, how do I overcome? I just told you that fear of the unknown causes a series of things that I gave you remedy for. But what is fear of the unknown? Fear of the unknown is lack of predictability and lack of control. How do I overcome these two things? Number one is this. Lack of predictability. What do? You need to make sure that you weigh out the cost and the benefit of every action you are going to take. Because remember, every action will have a risk. So in order for that, you need to make sure that you are testing your opinions, that you are looking for information, and that you are challenging your beliefs. Remember, you and I have a thing called confirmation bias, which means that when we believe something, our brains will try to give us evidence to strengthen that belief. However, when we are going to go into unknown territory, when there is unpredictability involved, when there is lack of predictability involved, we need to make sure that we are gathering information not only that is strengthening our beliefs, but we need to also be able to challenge our beliefs. Now, you need to remember two things in terms of how are you going to overcome lack of predictability. You need to first find evidence. You need to find evidence, and that's what you're going to do. You're going to do what? You're going to test your opinions, you're going to look for information, and you're going to challenge your beliefs. You need to find evidence. Now, no matter how much research you do, how much evidence you find, which is a good thing, you need to do that. You need to remember that whenever there is an action, there is a risk. You can minimize risk, but there will always be risk in any type of action you take. In fact, John Maxwell reminds us that to assume a 20% chance of being wrong when there is slight unpredictability. Meaning, at most, you're going to have 80% certainty. You need to know that you still have to act even with 20% of uncertainty because that's life. Fear of the unknown. There are things that you will not be able to control, okay? So if you have 80% certainty, go for it. If you've challenged your belief, if you looked for evidence, if you piled up the evidence, awesome. Here's the next thing you're going to do. So number one, how to overcome lack of predictability, find evidence. But remember, 80% certainty is good enough. And number two, you need to look for feedback. The Bible says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. The Bible also says that there is wisdom in numbers. You need to find mentors. You need to find accountability partners. You need to find people you can go to and talk to. You know, I have multiple people that I go to different things. When I have a question about the Bible, I go to someone. When I have a question about finances, I go to someone. When I have a question about health, here's why. You need to find feedback. You need to have mentors. You need to make sure that you are asking not only the right question, but the right question to the right person. You could be asking the right question, but if you're asking the wrong person, well, you're not going to get a good answer. And you could also be asking the right person, but the wrong question. You need to get feedback, but you need to make sure that you have the right question geared to the right person. So you want to overcome lack of predictability, find evidence, and get feedback. Number two, how do I overcome lack of control? Remember, fear of the unknown is lack of predictability and lack of control. What do I do for lack of control? Start by analyzing your circumstance and list the things you can control and the things you cannot control. I know it's such a simple exercise, but guys, we don't have to make it difficult. Something is simple, but it's not necessarily easy. But there's, I don't know, joy in simplicity. You don't have to recreate the wheel here. Grab a piece of paper, draw 2 circles on it. And on these 2 circles, you're going to put the things I can control and the things that I cannot control. Write all the things you cannot control on the outer circle. And then on the inner circle, put all the things you can control. And then you know what you're going to do? You're going to grab scissors and you're going to cut out the inner circle. You're going to grab the outer circle, which is the circle you cannot control. You're going to make a ball and you're going to shoot a basketball into the garbage can because you can't control it. So don't waste your time, energy, and focus on something you cannot control. Get that middle circle, and now you're going to make a plan with specific steps, with a specific time frame in the areas that you can control. Specific steps, specific plan, and you're going to give yourself a time frame. It's not going to be like when I get around. No, by the end of this week, by the end of this month, by June 10th, whatever it is, you need to give yourself a plan. And finally, so look, how do I overcome lack of control? Start by analyzing your circumstance. Do the circle of control. What can I control? What can I cannot control? I'm going to focus on only the things I can control. When I have the things I can control, I'm going to make a plan. I'm going to make a specific plan with specific steps with a specific time frame. And finally, number 3, you know the circle that you threw in the garbage because it's things that you cannot control? Well, now you have to choose. It's a choice. You choose faith over fear. I actually read such a great quote the other day by Mike Tyson. It was Mike Tyson, and he was talking to his son, and he was telling his son, you know what the difference between a hero and a coward is? He goes, it's not that he goes, the hero and the coward, they both have the same exact emotion. They both have fear, right? He goes, but one, the hero, chooses to show up and to act with his fear, while the coward has fear and then doesn't act. He becomes paralyzed. He doesn't do anything. So what I'm telling you to do now is, despite having fear, I want you to choose faith over fear. And how do you increase faith? Okay, Amanda, I'm going to choose faith. How do you increase your faith? Well, Romans 10:17 says this, so that faith comes by hearing, and hearing the word of God. Now it goes back to the first thing I told you. If you are feeling flooded by adrenaline and it's making you fight, flight, and freeze, if your amygdala is so enlarged right now because you're anxious and you're afraid, what do? You meditate on the word of God. This is how you choose faith over fear. You choose faith by what? Hearing the word of God. For that, the biggest thing. Hold on, let's see here. Will is saying, okay, for me, that is the biggest thing that sometimes makes me freeze, and that got worse when I got married. I think I'm missing the context here. So Will, maybe you can further explain, I don't know if it's a comment or a question, further explain it, and then I'll try to answer that for you. But look, so the last thing, how to overcome lack of control. Start by analyzing your circumstance. List the things you can control and the things you cannot control. Make a specific plan that includes a specific step and a time frame. And finally, choose faith over fear. And how do you increase your faith? Well, faith comes by hearing, and hearing the word of God. Spend time in the word of God. Rest in his promises. Do your part, and you need to trust in the one who knows all things. You are afraid of the unknown because you don't know. I don't know. I can't. I'm not a fortune teller, right? I don't know the future. I can barely handle my present. I can't control my past. I can't control my future. I can make choices today in my present, but I can choose by faith to trust in the one that knows all things. All right, guys? Very good. Thank you so much. I hope that was helpful to you. I hope tonight you have been able to overcome the fear of the unknown with these very practical, very quick, very simple remedies. Remedies that Joseph used, and he became the second person of power in all of Egypt. I'll see you guys next week.